Here's Tim Miller. I start with you because we were wrong. We were wrong. You and I said Matt Gaetz will be the Attorney General. Trump wants to see how low he can go. Apparently, the answer to how low he can go is whatever's sort of above Matt Gaetz and, I don't know, below Pete Hegseth. I don't know. But it is interesting when you find out what a bridge too far for Donald Trump looks like. Apparently, it looks like Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, the Gaetz eyebrows maybe are the low watermark for him. We were wrong about this, though. The wrongness was based on how these senators will act, right? And Matt Gaetz let them off the hook by withdrawing, right? He didn't force any of those 5 names. Though Lisa Murkowski was pretty public, in fairness to her, but she didn't force any of the other 4 to have to actually vote against him. And I think that will be the question, is where the rubber meets the road on that stuff. It's interesting. Gaetz may have decided to withdraw for other reasons. He might have not wanted the additional details about the apparently 2 encounters with the 17-year-old or the other payments that the New York Times reported on. I think that remains to be seen. I think a big test of that, like of our thesis, which was that these senators will fold to Trump, will be Hegseth and RFK. For a fact that Mitch McConnell, given his past and his commitment to the polio vaccine, is not at all interested in an anti-vaxxer leading HHS. Will he actually stand in the way of RFK Jr.? That'll be one test. And Pete Hegseth will be the other test. Will these same senators stand in the way of him? Pete Hegseth is not in any meaningful sense more qualified than Matt Gaetz. He's less qualified, actually. He also has scandal in his private life and allegations of sexual assault. There's a police report that was just out today about the detailing those allegations. And so, there's no difference between Hegseth and Gaetz. So the question is, which one of these nominees will Trump actually put muscle behind? Maybe none. And if he does stand behind the rest of them, will these senators actually show backbone when they have to in public? I think that remains to be seen.
Mike Schmidt, take us inside what the revelations that you reported last night. Take us inside the picture that was emerging of Matt Gaetz.
So what was significant about what we reported is that over the past few days, a lawyer for 2 of the women who said they had sex with Gaetz for money has been out there on television. He's been saying that they testified about that and that this indeed happened. And when we obtained this document from inside the federal investigation of Gaetz, it showed that Gaetz had sent the 2 women thousands and thousands of dollars in money. So it was bolstering the credibility of these different witnesses. And what you had at that point was a situation in which whether the House Ethics Committee report was going to come out or not, if Gaetz's nomination moved forward, he was going to be in a situation where he had one of 3 choices. He was going to be asked under oath, did you ever pay women for sex? And if he said no, the Democrats were going to point to the testimony from this lawyer and other documentation like this Justice Department document that we had and said, look, that's not true. You could be lying under oath. If he admitted to it, it would have created a different firestorm of it all. Or the third option, which would have perhaps been the most extraordinary, is that he could have taken the Fifth Amendment. And he could have taken the Fifth Amendment and not answered the question. And you would have had a situation in which the incoming Attorney General was taking the Fifth Amendment about his actions that were looked at in a Justice Department investigation, a Justice Department in which he was going to be taking over. And Senate Republicans were going to have to basically determine who was telling the truth. And it would have been, a time for them to say, OK, Matt Gaetz, you're either lying or you're not lying. And by stepping aside, he avoided that situation. And to what Tim was saying, now the Senate Republicans, you will not have to see how they will, they were going to publicly deal with this.
Mike, Joel Greenberg is serving 11 years in jail. And one of the things that he was charged with was sex trafficking of a minor. Is that the same person that Matt Gaetz is alleged to have had sex with, based on CNN's reporting, 2 times?
No, both Matt Gaetz and Joel Greenberg told federal authorities that he had had sex with a 17-year-old girl and that he saw Gates have sex with a 17-year-old girl. During the federal investigation, authorities learned that Gates had had sex with a 17-year-old girl 2 times over the span of a day in 2017. In one of those encounters, another adult woman participated in what was going on. I'm not sure how much that changed things. We already knew that Gates had been, that the authorities had learned that he had had sex with a 17-year-old girl. Another instance of that, obviously, sort of bolsters the idea that it happened. But at the end of the day, Joel Greenberg pled guilty to having sex with a 17-year-old girl who he knew was being paid for that. He was facing a 10-year mandatory minimum because of that. He received more than a 10-year sentence. Gates was never indicted. Had he been indicted on that same charge and had he been convicted, he would have faced a mandatory 10 years in prison. But obviously, the department never charged him. And there's obviously a lot of questions about that, questions that we don't have really good answers to about why the department didn't charge him.
I guess what's interesting, Kirsty, is that there's so much in the public. I mean, and it becomes, and this may sound so old-fashioned, but it becomes about the flagrant lack of character. Right, you've got this guy sitting in prison, charged with the same crime at allegedly some of the same parties. You've got a lawyer for 2 women who is describing the women as having zero political, I think his quote was, dog in the fight, but who saw him have sex with a woman who was 17 at the time. You've got this new revelation that he actually had sex with a 17-year-old twice. In one night. You've got a Republican senator, one of the no votes, saying that he would crush ED drugs, chase him with energy drinks so he could go all night long, which is just a portrait of, even in the Trump era, an unbelievable lack of care. I mean, you know what the word is, morals, character. It seems like he was so bad that it wasn't even about the non-charged activity.
Well, I think you have a lot of this, as you said, which was known. It's been known for years that women have accused Matt Gaetz of paying them for sex. And so now we have more meat on the bones. We have these payments where it's showing Matt Gaetz making a payment. One of those payments said it was for tuition reimbursement, showing, I think, consciousness of guilt. He's looking to conceal what this was really for. The way they found these women was on a sugar daddy's website. You have more information about the fact that they're traveling across state lines. Mm-hmm. There are a multitude of federal crimes here that it seems like there is strong evidence. We don't know why DOJ didn't pursue it, but there's certainly strong evidence. Just knowingly transporting adult women across state lines for the purpose of prostitution, that is a federal crime. That is one of the crimes that P. Diddy is charged with right now out of SDNY. And even with respect to the minor, sex trafficking of a minor, even if he didn't know at the time that she was 17, you actually don't need to prove that as a prosecutor in order to make that stick. You just need to show there's reckless disregard of her age, that he had a reasonable opportunity to observe her. And you have, again, the women, you start with the women who are corroborating each other. And then you start with the documents, the travel records, the payments. And when you have Matt Gaetz actually making these payments, not just one payment here or there, but thousands of dollars in payments, suggesting this was happening for many occasions, suggesting it was happening over years. I mean, this is, if it's not criminal, it's hard to see how at a minimum it wouldn't be a state crime. It is illegal to solicit prostitution in the state of Florida. So it's hard to see how he wasn't hit with something here. And this Joel Greenberg, his associate, who is, as you mentioned, serving a sentence of 11 years in prison for the same conduct, trafficking of a minor, he said during his plea, I didn't know she was 17. He's still in jail for that. And the judge said that his cooperation, Joel Greenberg's cooperation against many individuals, not just Matt Gaetz, but his cooperation was among the most significant he had seen in 22 years on the bench. So he gave up the goods on Matt Gaetz. I don't know that. That's under seal, but I know that because otherwise, based on what was public, it doesn't quite make sense. So there is a lot here. And knowing how much there is here, knowing how much has been public for so long, the fact that Donald Trump decided this was going to be his top cop is an absolute disgrace. And the only reason he isn't because Donald Trump had second thoughts. Oh, gee, it's so terrible that he did these things. No, it's because he couldn't get him confirmed because some of the senators had a spine, which maybe he wasn't counting on.